May I now call upon Amy Simons to lead us through the summary on learning from program interventions.
It's always very difficult, as you've just heard, to do justice to very complex and rich discussions. Fortunately, unlike the challenge that David Beckman faced in trying to summarize an entire country's experience in an hour and a half, or 4 countries' experiences, the session that I'm reporting on dealt with 4 program interventions, which were at a much more micro level. But as we heard from the presenters, all were undertaken with the notion of scaling up, of replication and scaling up and moving on. So So we, in fact, have organized our feedback in sort of looking at the what we talked about, and then addressing a couple of questions about the how, the lessons about how to do this best, and then identifying a couple of the remaining challenges with regard to scaling up and filling in gaps in knowledge. The what is pretty clear. We had 4 interventions, 2 having to do with community-based interventions, specifically focused on nutrition improvement, 1 focused on introducing animal source foods as a way of nutrition improvement, but also directly addressing poverty. And then a 4th case focusing on the program interventions which were part of the national vision in Brazil of realizing the commitment of the right to food, and basically talking about mostly about school feeding. We saw that clearly there were different scales from community to national scales involved. We saw that there were different program goals and different impact pathways. The 1,000 days focus of the program led by Concern Worldwide in Zambia, which is very much focusing on the first 1,000 days of life. The Ghana case of ENAM, increasing consumption of animal source food, and the commercialization and access to markets. All of the cases, all of the program interventions, I think it's important to note, were driven by previous experience of the implementing partners. In many cases, the partners were refining approaches that had been tested and sort of experienced before. But in the case particularly of the program in Zambia called RAIN, which is being carried out with the leadership of Concern Worldwide, there really is a more exploratory approach with the intention of building new evidence. It's important to note that 2 of the cases, 2 of the program interventions, and the teams include IFPRI researchers for the express purpose of learning while doing, but also building an evidence base with regard to the relationship between agriculture, nutrition, and health. Again, there were some commonalities. All of the efforts emphasized empowering and engaging women, particularly in women and local participants. In the case of Brazil with school feeding, the emphasis has been on local procurement of food for the programs. But in the other 3 program interventions, it was very clear that virtually front and center was the objective of empowering and engaging women. The integrated approach in all cases included different sectors, different delivery systems, but in fact a convergence of interests of a broad group of stakeholders. On how, we heard a couple of important commonalities. The inclusion of the diversity of local and national partners was important, not just to sort of get everybody to know about the program and to participate, but really, and this was emphasized by all the speakers, to ensure that the definition of the problem that was being addressed, or the challenge that was being addressed, was right, and that the impact pathway that was envisioned was in fact going to lead to the expected impact. They also talked about the importance of understanding the context for problem solving, moving, for example, a very successful program that Helen Keller International is leading in Asia to environments in West Africa, a very different context and very much of a need for assessment, analysis, fine-tuning, refining, based on experience, but taking into account the new context. We also, all of the speakers emphasized that the inclusiveness of the programs with regard to participants from a variety of sectors was critical to both the replicability and the sustainability of the effort. In sum, I think all speakers emphasized the importance of monitoring and evaluation for learning, number one, but also for advocacy, to sort of fix those outstanding problems which were there. Particularly Brazil actually enacted a law in response to the perceived need to involve local producers in the production of food for the school feeding program. And the last point was having one partner that focused specifically on the evidence, the learning, and the monitoring and evaluation, and in 2 cases, IFPRI. I'm out of time, but there are a number of gaps in knowledge that were brought up: the complexity of women's lives, the water challenge, which is more constraining in Africa than in Asia, and identification of nutritional gaps in local diets and using local biodiversity to address these. Thank you.
Thank you for leading us through, again, the issue of integrated approach, experience that bring conversions for success has been emphasized. Michael Anderson, please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask for your pity. It is 3:45 in the afternoon. Those of you who are on Indian time are just on the verge of thinking it's about afternoon sleep time. Those of you who are jet-lagged are thinking it's definitely time for an afternoon nap. And the topic is evaluation and the importance of evaluations. This is the point when everyone goes to sleep. And my message to you is this is absolutely the moment to wake up, because this topic is critical to delivering the agenda set out on the conference title today. And I'm just going to give you 6 points. No PowerPoint, but maybe you could write them down. Point number 1, evaluation is important. We know it's important because it's the only way we know what works. Overall regression analysis, which says countries which have more food also have better nutrition. Duh, they also have more income. So what we need actually are some really good impact evaluations which show that if you invest in nutrition, you also get better nutrition and health outcomes. And we need that to know what works. We also need to know that we're being held accountable, and we need to learn from it. In the donor community, there's an enormous appetite for evidence. It's growing. Donors are much more evidence-driven. Second point is that the evidence base for this proposition that we can leverage agriculture to get better health and nutrition outcomes, the evidence base is weak. The systematic reviews show that there's very little evidence demonstrating that connection, possibly because the connection's not there, but more likely because we've underinvested in evaluations, and the methodologies have not been sufficiently robust to demonstrate the proposition. So it's a call to arms in terms of getting the evidence out there. My third point is about the importance of systematic reviews, and Marie Gardner from the International Initiative in Impact Evaluation spoke, where they're doing a number of systematic reviews, and systematic reviews help us to survey all the evidence that's out there, to learn what gaps there are, what needs to be studied, what we can say and cannot say, most importantly across the entire causal chain. Fourth point is there were some terrific examples of good evaluations. This was really exciting. We had an evaluation of the yellow flesh sweet potato being rolled out in Mozambique and Uganda. Again, IFPRI involvement showed that the rollout over a couple of years, a couple of models, that the vitamin A levels in children reached essentially recommended levels, but through rollout of yellow flesh sweet potato, and an evaluation of Kickstart program to use treadle pumps, showing that although the evaluation is only partway through, preliminary results show that there's evidence for better nutritional outcomes, better health outcomes, improved agricultural productivity through the use of treadle pumps, although still work to be finished on that. The fifth point I'd like to make, so the fourth point was there are really some good examples of how to do really good evaluations out there. The fifth point is that methods matter. We want more randomized control trials where we can get them, but it would be a major mistake to think randomized controlled trials is the only way to evaluate things. That we need a variety of methods for a variety of interventions. We need to be able to use mixed methods drawing upon social analysis, good qualitative analysis, process analysis, and that for all of us in this room, that means there's a real call to become methodologically sophisticated about being good buyers of high quality research on what works and what doesn't work, so we can learn lessons. And the sixth point is the way we communicate all of this matters. That most evaluations are published in a form which is impossible for senior decision makers to consume. We don't feed the results back to communities well enough. We need to find ways to get this stuff in front of senior officials through meetings, through briefings, through so on. And I'd like to share with you a dirty secret. I've not seen my priest this week, so I'd like to get it off my chest, which is I have been the recipient, as an evaluation enthusiast, I've been a recipient of many thick evaluation tomes, which I've just put on my shelf and never read. And I care about evaluations. I've still not read them. So we need to get the communication out there. And the last point, there was a word of warning for donors, which is that if we fund sectorally and don't think in integrated ways, it makes it very difficult for people on the ground to provide holistic solutions. So let's improve our act. Thank you.
Thank you, Henderson. Today's sessions, parallel sessions, are really primer, setting the stage for tomorrow. And time is not our best ally. And I would like you to use this session, what you have heard, to sharpen your mind for tomorrow. Parallel session, which will examine how various tools, levers, and incentives can be used to promote strong links among agriculture, nutrition, and health. Then, in the afternoon tomorrow, we'll apply regional perspective, gaining insights from regional stakeholders about the unique strategies and levers that are best for each region. So, no questions, no further comments. Keep your fire for tomorrow. But I want to leave you with thoughts, because all through the issue of getting the impact that Anderson has emphasized through evaluation is to adopt a multi-sectoral approach. This has been sung time and again, but then the question is, why is it not being applied effectively? Probably because we are not appreciating it fully. I just want you to look at your arms, your fingers. How many are they? 5, isn't it? In a normal situation, on each. Now, those who believe in God, God put a wisdom here. Those who believe in nature, nature has put a wisdom here. These 5 fingers are not of the same length, the same thickness, but they all work together in order to enable you whole and deliver. So that is the emphasis why multi-sectoral approach is important in whatever we want to deliver. Now, with that food of thought, can I ask you, these panelists, chairpersons, have done an excellent job in chairing the parallel session. Can we give them a rousing claps? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.